Welcome to Speaking in Spoons with your host, Christina Brookman.
Hi, my name is Christina Brookman, and I am disabled. I'm a self advocate, a disability advocate, and host of Speaking in Spoons, a chronically ill podcast. And I'm here today to speak about self advocacy. So let me transition to a little presentation I have. So I've titled this Speaking in Spoons because of my podcast, Speaking in Spoons, a chronically ill podcast. Um, I started with invisible disability, and that has progressed to visible disability. I have chronic illnesses and rare disorders. So it's been quite a battle, and quite a journey, and continues to be. Getting a diagnosis, I think, can be one of the most difficult things for people with disabilities, especially chronic disabilities, rare disorders. Oftentimes, what we think of as rare disorders, there are quite a lot of people out there that have them. It's just they're misunderstood. And so I had to learn a bunch of things on my journey of getting diagnosed that I'd like to share with you. I truly believe that self-advocacy is education. It is about educating yourself. It is about educating others about your disorders, and also helping the world understand not just about your disorders, but about your needs. That's educating them as well to your needs and advocacy. So whenever I go to a new doctor, I have a new doctor packet. Um, I make a timeline. I'm extremely OCD. You'll learn from this, but I make a timeline of my symptoms. When did I start feeling things? At what age? And maybe if I notice anything happening around it. A lot of doctors will ask you to do this. So this is something I learned to create, but also by the time I got to a geneticist, um, I I took what I did for the geneticist and then applied it to all of my other new doctors moving forward, because it really helped me with the geneticist. So the timeline of your symptoms, and then also separately break down your symptoms by body system, cardiovascular, neurological, um, endocrinological. And this is one of my symptoms: difficulty speaking and brain fog sometimes. But your endocrine system. Are you having hot flashes? Things like that. And you may separate it and put it in the wrong category. And that's totally okay, because it's create your own category. So whatever works for you to help communicate to your doctor what you are experiencing. And I think this could also really help parents of children or adults that are on the spectrum, and parents of children on the spectrum. I was talking to a woman the other day whose grandson, who she cares for, is autistic, and the way he feels things and then describes how he feels things at first didn't quite make sense to her until she understood, got a little bit more detail. But it's helping break that down. Once she understood, oh, it feels like I'm being pulled through gravity. The doctor helped her understand he was feeling all of the sensory, of his stomach moving. you know? So kind of just breaking down those things helps your doctor understand you and your experience. And don't forget, you know your body better than anybody. The next thing I created was a caretaker cheat sheet. And I keep that with me. I have it in my purse. So no matter where I am, there's a copy with me. Right now, I live with on the second floor at my mom's. I've got one posted on the second floor in my room and the other room up here. I've also got it on the fridge downstairs for her or for the EMTs whenever they have to be called. And on that cheat sheet, it's got my name, my birth date, and my address. It's got my medical power of attorney and my emergency contact's name and numbers. It lists my conditions. It lists my doctor's names, the condition they treat me for, and their number. It lists, instructions for the ambulance, like hospital preference, things like that. It lists all of my medication and allergies, alphabetical order. So that's two separate things. Allergies and the reaction, and then your list of medications in alphabetical order, name, dose, and the reason you take it. Because a lot of people for medications, it may have an FDA, this is what it's used for. But let's say like gabapentin. It is a seizure medication. It is also a pain medication, and it is also a mood stabilizer. So it's very important that they know why you take this medication, because they could just assume that you take it and have a condition that you don't. Also, your medication schedule, the time and the dose, and keep that alphabetical as well. And preferred pharmacy. And you're like, Christina, this is really, really OCD, but this has saved me. And it's also, my doctors and my nurses love it because it really helps them when I go there. I have like 12 to 14 medications. So this way, they're not like looking at just like a paragraphs of blobs of stuff. They can immediately see things, and it's organized, and it helps them help me because they have very limited time to see me. So if you're helping them, ease up some of that time, then you're getting better quality of care as well. And that's you advocating for yourself. I also do a special sheet of a list of special instructions for in case of emergency, like with my migraines. Like I said, it looks weird. So I do have an emergency pill that can be given to me. I also don't regulate my body temperature, which is part of my POTS or dysautonomia. It's also part of the migraine. I have ice hats. They look like little blue Smurf hats, and we keep them in the freezer. So letting people know ahead of time, hey, if I start not being able to talk, if I'm red, if I'm looking a little funny, go get an ice hat, put it on me. Maybe elevate my feet. Ask me yes or no questions, because with yes or no questions, I can do thumbs up. I can do thumbs down, even if I can't talk for myself. That's what I've worked for myself. Thumbs up, thumbs no system. People that care for me know if I can't do thumbs up or thumbs down, that's when you call the ambulance. If I'm still able to do this, I'm good. But if I can't, that's when you call the ambulance. So giving them those tools to help you helps make sure that you get taken care of the way you need to be and want to be, and that you're a part of that process even when you can't be. Make sure you have an emergency evacuation plan. This was something I hadn't thought of until my friend, who's a part of emergency plans in Richmond, was like, Christina, do you have an emergency evacuation plan? You're on the second floor. And I was like, oh, that's a problem. So coming up with those systems, when we didn't have the chairlift working, we were like jerry rigging different ways to get me things up to the second floor and down. If I have to sit on my bum and scoot down, or there were often times I would be up here for weeks at a time, and people would have to bring things up to me and bring things back down. And I was like, man, like we could really use a dumbwaiter at this point. Um, get to know your neighborhood firehouse. If you have any different kind of conditions, and I say different because I have different kind of conditions, but with anything, if you need specialized care, it's always a good idea to go talk to your local firehouse and apprise them of the situation. Say, I have these really strange looking migraines. It looks like I'm having a stroke, but it's not. And here's what you need to do in this kind of situation. Things like that. So here's kind of a list of most of my diagnoses. And as you can see, I started getting diagnosed at the age of 15 with fibromyalgia. And then 10 years, I got 2 more diagnoses. And 10 years later, I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, type 3. It's hypermobile type, which actually Ehlers-Danlos getting kind of in the news more recently. Miss Virginia has Ehlers-Danlos a couple years back. There are types that are rare. My type, however, is not rare. It is much more common than people think it is. However, people don't know about it. We have very few doctors that know about it, and you usually have to leave your state to find out about it or get proper care, which causes its own difficulties. So that, again, that's why I truly believe advocacy is education. And then if you look, I was kept getting diagnoses and diagnoses up till I was 33, and then it stopped again. And apparently I can't do my math because I said 10-year gap, but it is only let's see if I can do math right now, a 5-year gap until I got my next. But that was a big amount of time for me. And that's when I found out the misdiagnosis of pseudo seizures. I was misdiagnosed with pseudo seizures when I was 31, and told it was all in my head. And it was in my head. It was neurological, though, not psychological like they told me. I have hemiplegic migraines, although the migraine specialist is thinking it may be MUMS, which is very, very similar to hemiplegic migraines. But the reason we know it's migraine is migraine treatments work on me. It's still very difficult to treat. It's in no way perfect, but I'm not paralyzed all day, every day, which I was a year ago. But it's going to be a lifelong thing. And that's something a lot of patients with invisible disability, with chronic illnesses, with rare disorders, and particularly women are told it's all in your head. And it's unfortunate because you can't get the right treatment if you're not getting the proper diagnosis. And we do have a horrible stigma of mental health and invisible disability mental health in our country. So it's not about, it's twofold. When you're diagnosed with a mental health issue, when in fact it's a physical issue, you're not getting proper care, but also you're getting mistreated, because a lot of patients, and having been misdiagnosed with it being psychosomatic, you're extremely mistreated. And I was mistreated for many, many years and had to fight and keep trying to get other people to look at me. till I was finally properly diagnosed. I do want to let you know it is okay to do your own homework. A lot of people are afraid of being considered a hypochondriac, but the internet has changed and has grown. You know, um, there are great resources on the internet to find out about things you've been diagnosed with, but also to research symptoms you're having and kind of glean, could I possibly have this? And look, check out support groups, check out foundations, talk to an advocate at a foundation. That's how I found out I had Ehlers-Danlos, was I called their national foundation and told them all of my symptoms. And they said, yes, you should see a geneticist. And then I researched who's the best geneticist to see. And I was very fortunate at the time. I lived just 3 or 4 hours from Cincinnati Children's, where Dr. Brad Tinkle worked, who's internationally renowned for Ehlers-Danlos hypermobile type research. So it's okay to do your own homework. It's impossible for doctors to know all about every single condition. It's just physically impossible. And make sure you have a doctor who listens. They do exist. What I hear from doctors and other people, you're too young to have all this. There are babies in the NICU and children in the cancer ward. I am not too young. It's just musculoskeletal pain. Never assume. You or your doctors don't assume. Just to let you know, and I'll tell you more about this coming up, but I had 6 loose screws in my neck. 6. And I kept being told it was just muscle pain. It's in your head. Just because they don't know the answer and haven't had the test or haven't found the test yet, doesn't mean that it's psychosomatic. Make sure everything is ruled out. You're complex. Yes, I am complex. So are millions of people. You should see someone who specializes in this. If I saw a doctor who specialized in each of my disorders, different parts of my body would live in multiple states. And that is why we have to work with our doctors as a team and find ones that are willing to learn and talk to each other. We're understaffed and we have too many patients. I completely understand and empathize with doctors and nurse practitioners, understaffed and having too many patients, especially the traveling physicians and nurse practitioners, because I had that this year. And I had to stop one of my nurse practitioners because I wasn't getting the care that I needed. And she came in and she didn't realize that I used the wheelchair because she didn't talk about patient history. She didn't do a thorough exam during her examination. She didn't communicate. The nurse practitioner teams weren't communicating with each other or reading each other's notes. But also, my wheelchair was right by the front door that she walked through to come to my room. And I had a rollator there as well, and my cane. She had absolutely no idea. So I stopped her and I said, I get this and I empathize with you and I can respect that. But also, this is your job. It's your job to know these things. This is my life. So I have to stand up for myself. I have to advocate for myself. And I'm not a bad person for asking for the things that I need and making sure that those things happen and that I am being taken care of the way I should be. And this is your life. So it's okay that you do too. Just like you would a car or a house, make sure that your doctor is the right fit for you. Again, this is your life. There are more zebras out there than we think. You're not alone. Return to Cinder. I have to joke about a lot of the things that have happened in my life because that's how I cope. But about 10 years ago, I was left by my husband. at my mom's. I had no money. I had no doctors. I had his insurance for the year of separation, but then it was gone. But also, we had lived in Ohio and now I was in Virginia. So I was left at my mom's with nothing. And I had a true lack of community support system. Um, just like in Field of Dreams, build your support system, good things will follow. And I know that's cheesy, but I like to think that. What makes up your support system? Family, friends, medical team, and community resources. A lot of people with disabilities, and the more I talk to other people with disabilities, I'm realizing I'm not alone, and that a lot of people, well, people are frequently left by a partner when they become sick or disabled. There's a very, very high percentage of that, unfortunately. But also, not everybody has family or friends. When I found myself in a new town, I had friends, but it was friends that I hadn't talked to in years or seen, and they'd built their own lives and their own things, and they were busy, and a lot of them had kids. And having kids is a full-time job. And then, I am an only child, so I didn't have siblings that could help. And my family was not very close. And my father did not live close. He actually moved right around that same time to the other side of the state. And my mom has a lot of my conditions are genetic. So I was very, very lucky to have a roof and help with food. But getting on the phone and finding those resources was not something my mom could do. And so that became something I had to do in order to survive. What I found was dlCV. First, I went to czars. I was determined to try to work, and they actually closed my case. It was closed in Ohio and then closed again here. And my counselor here told me, Christina, you need to find Elizabeth Horn. And so I sought her out, and she was at dlCV and still is. And she fought for me. And I also learned a lot from her, which was wonderful. It was wonderful to kind of learn about the process. And I know I harassed too. But she was always willing to answer my questions and explain things, because I'm one of those people, the nerd that I am, the more information I have, the more empowered I feel, and the calmer I feel. And it's information that I learned through that process that I help my friends that I've met online and other places through there. And I also continue to send friends and people that I meet to dlCV, to Elizabeth, and other resources. And I'm actually still with DARS, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. Also was a client of DBVI because I am visually impaired. Resources for independent living, which I've gone to, and then social services, SNAP, Feed More, Meals on Wheels, churches, Virginia Housing Authority, and HUD. We are in a housing crisis, but those that are on disability and have been in poverty outside of disability know we have been in a housing crisis for a very long time, which I'm very fortunate to have had my mom to go back to, but I'm starting to create my plan for my future of where can I go, because I negotiated housing for myself at apartment complex that knocked down their rate for me because they had accessible units and I was on disability. However, they got new ownership a year ago. I had to leave and sleep on friends' sofas, and then eventually wound up back at my mom's till further notice. The Butcher of Pakistan, or Dr. Durrani. This was my spinal surgeon back when I lived in Ohio. He is a fugitive. He is charged with healthcare fraud, false statements related to healthcare matters, mail fraud, and illegal drug distribution. He told me that my neck was so unstable that if I were to get in a car accident, I could get an internal decapitation and die. So I got my neck fused. Come to find out later, my neck is actually congenitally fused from the skull, the base of my skull, to the first vertebrae. So as my most recent surgeon has told me, my neck was going nowhere. Yeah. I actually, well, let me start at the beginning. He was recommended to me by internationally renowned geneticist working at a top-tier children's hospital, along with a dentist who specialized in cranial instability with Ehlers-Danlos and TMJ. Both said I was at the point of needing surgery, and he was the person to go to. So I trusted him, trusted both of them, and that made me trust him. But this goes to my point in that doctors are fallible. Doctors are human. And this surgeon actually lied to the medical board. So it's very, very important to get multiple opinions. Don't just go see one surgeon. See at least 3 before any surgery. I have learned that lesson the hard way. He had a dog in his office. And that was honestly he was one of the kindest doctors that I've ever met. I never saw it coming. I was desperate for help because of pain. And I think people do desperate things when they're in pain, and will listen to any kind of, anything out there. And we really have to take a step back and breathe and protect ourselves and find ways to breathe through the pain, because we don't want to allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. I think it's very easy as someone with a disability, a chronic illness, to be taken advantage of, because we so desperately want not to be in pain. We want to be quote unquote normal, or live normal lives, happy lives. There's a grieving process that comes with disability, grieving the life you thought that you would have if you're somebody who becomes disabled later in life. Or, for parents with disabled children, it's not grieving, it's grieving. You're still also grieving those things that you envisioned for yourself as a grandparent, or maybe watching your child walk across a stage at graduation or prom or getting married, just like we grieve those things for ourselves. And it's because this world is not yet built to accommodate people with disabilities yet. We've made huge strides, but there's still lots to be done. My surgery was in 2012 in Ohio. When I was returned to sender in 2013 in Virginia, I continued to have pain. So I asked for images of my neck, and all my doctors said no in Virginia. local neurologists have an agreement that if you see one, you cannot see another. And I was like, well, this, I'm not liking the care that I'm getting with this neurologist. I think it's absolutely okay for me to be able to seek a second opinion, if not a third or a fourth. But because of this agreement, I faced a lot of heat trying to do that. And I still know people that have that problem themselves. But I got 3 different hospitals to break that rule so I could get different opinions. Um, because it just wasn't working. And I said, this physician is not working for me. I'm not working for them. I need to be able to see another doctor and get another opinion. And it's not about going in, with hatred or anger. It's going and trying to talk to them about what you need, and just making clear it's not unreasonable to ask for a second opinion. And to deny you that, I think, is actually unreasonable. I had to go on medical leave from grad school a year ago. I tried to go back to grad school to pursue my MSW, to be a medical social worker with children. But my neck pain started up really bad. I went to the ER and was told it was just musculoskeletal and to take ibuprofen. Pain management kept sending to me to the ER. ER kept sending me back to pain management. I finally got an MRI and was told it was all okay, despite the fact that my fusion was blocking their view. When you have metal back there, you have to get a CT in order to get the view that they need to see if anything's wrong. I finally got a CT because I kept pushing. And I was like, you're not going to get rid of me. Something's going on. 2 loose screws in my neck. I went to 3 different surgeons before I found one willing to operate. All the other surgeons were hesitant because of my youth, which is what they said. I don't feel young, but because of my youth and the complexities of my conditions. But Dr. Scheimer at UVA agreed. He said, as long as you understand that this may not reverse your pain or stop your pain, I'm okay. And I'll do it. And I was like, will it prevent me from damage, like further damage? And he said, yes. And I said, then I'm okay with it. I was like, as long as I know up front that I may continue to live in lifelong pain, but I will prevent further damage, let's get all that out. That's the safe thing to do. And I also felt violated having that in my body. I felt extremely violated. He removed 6 loose screws. So it wasn't just 2, there were 6. And he said that 2 were so loose, he was afraid during surgery they would touch my spine. They would bump into my spinal column and cause paralysis. So he said, thank God we did that surgery. Checking out AMA, or the Great Escape, as I like to call it. This happened last summer. I ended up going to the ER because of a hemiplegic migraine. I had stroke-like symptoms that wouldn't stop. So my roommate, we called 911, went to the ER. I was admitted. I was also having a really bad trigeminal neuralgia episode, just really painful. And they couldn't, usually when I get the migraine cocktail, I can walk within 15 minutes, but it didn't work. I stayed for a week. And then all of a sudden, and they're like, you have a fever, and we think you have shingles, and that's what your pain is. And I was like, shingles? But I don't have a rash. And they actually put everybody had to wear, like, when you watch those movies when there's like an outbreak, everybody had to wear like full uniforms and all this stuff, like to protect themselves, and they limited the people that could come in and out of my room. The funny thing is, I did not have shingles. I was right, but it's because the doctor had misdiagnosed me. I had to wait like 3 days for the test results to come back, and I kept asking and asking, and I was in pain, but it made my care not as good because I was they couldn't send as many people in and out, and because they had to change every time they went in and out, and they were also low on nurses, particularly night shift and weekends is always like the worst time to go to the hospital. um and I was like, something is going on. Like my jaw, I woke up one morning and my jaw was just killing me, and it felt like it was swelling. So I talked to the doctor and I told the nurses, and um, the doctor's like, well, it's probably your TMJ. I was like, yes, I have TMJ. She's like, well, okay, it's probably your TMJ. It'll be fine. Um, a couple hours later, I was still in excruciating pain, and I was like, I know I'm on narcotics, that I should not be feeling my TMJ right now. So I asked for the nurse. I was like, I need a second opinion. Well, I was like, can I get a CT? Do you have any if it is TMJ, can anybody look at it? This particular hospital didn't have anybody that would be able to look at it, or the machines to really be able to look at it. And I was like, well, can you send me to the hospital in town that does, so I can get, a second opinion? And she's like, no, because it's just your TMJ. We'll wait, and later we'll do an, image when that machine like opens up. Here's a lozenge. And I was like, huh? She literally gave me a lozenge to put in the inside of my mouth, like right in here, because of the menthol. And she said the menthol, will help. Well, it just got worse and worse and worse. And so like I called 911 because I was so desperate. I was in so much pain. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. I have incontinence issues, and I had wet myself. In the past 2 nights, no one had changed me. So I would go the whole night in excruciating pain and laying in my own urine. And no one would change me because they were so short-staffed. So I called 911 because I said, I need help. I couldn't get the social workers to talk to me. I'd paged for them. I called them. I even had my power of attorney emailing them during the day, trying to get them to come and visit me or talk to me. I was there for 5 days. But during like they just didn't visit. They wouldn't call to my room. They wouldn't talk to me. So that's when I called 911, and I said, I'm being held against my will. And so I was eventually I had a friend pick me up, and I left AMA, or against medical advice, which fortunately I did not have to pay for, but a lot of people do end up having to pay for because their insurance won't cover it if your doctor's orders are for you to stay. It could have also been that I did threaten to sue, and I kept calling, and asking for my bill to be uh cut, because I was like, this was absolute ridiculous care. But my friend picked me up and took me to another hospital in town, where they immediately diagnosed it as an abscess. That was me when it was looking good. I was like a chipmunk, and it swelled up. Oh, here's all my notes. That would have been helpful. It was very painful. But as soon as they diagnosed it, they drained it, and kept me overnight on a pain medicine drip. and an antibiotic drip. He said, I don't know how you survived this long without pain medication. But when you are a chronic pain patient, you have a very high pain tolerance. And it's also your body will do amazing things when it's in that extreme amount of pain. You can survive even when you think you can't. And they drained the abscess, but it was so bad, and they pulled the tooth that a week later I kept having to go back like 2 times because they almost had to drain my neck. My trip down the stairs. So I live now, like I said, on a second floor, and I have a chair that I ride up and down. But when I go into paralysis, we had to call, an ambulance to come and take me to the hospital. And the first time that happened, when they came, I'm dead weight. They dropped me down the stairs, and then one of them fell on top of me. And then I kept having nightmares and flashbacks to it, to the point where I did not want anybody to send me to the hospital while I was living here on the second floor. But it got to that point where it was really bad again. And my loved ones pled with me, and they're like, and I finally, just let them call the ambulance. And the people that arrived denied that I was dropped the first time. They invalidated my experience, not just my experience, but those of my family and my boyfriend at the time, who had watched in horror as I was dropped down the stairs. And that was very scary for them as well. They also wouldn't let anybody come on the ambulance with me. And when I'm like that, I can't speak. And my eyes also spasm shut. So I can't see. So after all of this, I ended up calling the firehouse and reported the issue. I was going to look at legal steps to take, but I realized that for my own peace of mind, it wasn't about money. I want to make sure this never ever happens to another person or their family again. And I really felt like it was about education, because they need to look at how they're taking somebody down the stairs. They also need to look at how the professionalism of how they speak with family during events like this. And also, as someone that can't speak or see, to advocate for myself, I absolutely am allowed to have somebody ride in the vehicle with me. There's no reason to not have somebody there. So I was able to speak to the people in charge and make sure that that I was heard and my family was heard, in hopes that this would not happen again. So the podcast, advocacy, and the future. So here's some Christina-isms, which I may have already thrown in, but things I've learned that in being disabled and in self-advocating. You have to learn to be your own best friend. You are with yourself more than anyone else, 24 hours a day, from birth to death. You must become your own cheerleader, because there will be times when you don't have anyone else. Never apologize for asking for what you need, for advocating to protect yourself and find answers. Surround yourself with people who believe in you. You will lose people, but the good ones stay. Going to counseling is a sign of strength, not weakness. Prepare your child with a disability to advocate for themselves so they can when they are an adult. Don't approach every situation as a battle. Stay calm, ask questions, present your needs. But don't be afraid of confrontation if necessary. Learn as you go and pivot, as my friend and co-host Nate would say, adapt. We have peaks and we have valleys. Enjoy the good times when you are in a valley, and when you are in a valley, remember a good day will eventually come. Find your mantra. Always remind yourself of the worst thing that you have lived through. You survived that. Everything else seems easy. Just because you're homebound doesn't mean you can't socialize. Have Zoom parties and movie nights with your friends. I watch horror movies with people via Zoom. It's hysterical, and it helps you forget all the stress and other things you're living through. Join support groups. Just know when to leave when it becomes too negative. There are good people out there that want to help. Seek them out. And then this is what I want to do. I want to help others like I have been helped, like dlCV and DARS, resources for independent living, and some of my caseworkers. I'm working on getting my MSW, hopefully. I'm studying to become a board certified patient advocate and continue with this podcast. I'm getting to interview people that have disabilities to give them a platform to share their story. And also with quote unquote experts in the field to talk about certain topics. Like we've had someone from Disability Law Center come and talk about nursing homes and assisted living facilities. We're going to have someone come on about voting. We've had pain and acceptance, all kinds of things. And what is disability? So I wrote this the other day and on Facebook, and I wanted to share it with you because it's kind of like my reflection that I think applies here. But while I can be frustrated at individuals and organizations, what I take from my experiences is that individuals with disabilities will only get the care they need when change happens at a systemic level. No individual or organization sets out to make it harder for people with disabilities or to destroy their lives. In fact, quite the opposite. The lack of funding, training, and staff make it impossible for them to do what they set out and promised to do. If we want our loved ones, ourselves, to have even basic resources like housing, food, transportation, phone, insurance, we cannot sit back and complain. We have to be a part of making change happen. Volunteer, write organizations, and share your insight and experience. Go to the Hill, write your representatives. Change can only truly happen if those with disabilities and their loved ones involve themselves in the process. You are not alone. You may feel alone sometimes, but you're not alone. You are a warrior. You are an X-Men. And I love this picture of a demon with a little girl. And it says, you wake up every morning to fight the same demons that left you so tired the night before. And that, my love, is bravery. This is our season 2 title for Speaking in Spoons podcast. You can learn more about the podcast and what I'm working on at www.speakinginspoons.com. Thank you for having me. And we're back. This is your host, Christina Brookman, and Dr. Nate Straus for our after party. Hey Nate, so you've known me for a while, so like you said, a lot of these stories like you knew, but some of it was new. So what do you think?
Well, you told me the hospital stories, so I knew about all that, but I didn't know about what you did to prep for doctors and stuff and all that timeline stuff. I don't do that. So if people don't it's not something you have to do, and I don't know. Making things easier for doctors was never been my prerogative, but for some people, I think it helps, and it also helps to kind of lay out so you can keep it straight in your own mind.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it also really helped once I started having caretakers. It really helped, like having that cheat sheet with basically all the questions that EMTs would ask if they came, or like once I got to the hospital, what they would want to know, like my name, my birth date, my address, and then like like all of that stuff really helped caretakers, because I was shocked how little of that they were actually given. Like they're supposed to have like a care plan, but half the time they don't have a care plan. And then when they do have a care plan, it's very limited. And like when I'm having some of these symptoms, it's scary for someone who's never seen it before. Like the more acclimated they get to it, but even family members, like it scares them because they're worried I'm having a stroke. It's a lot of pressure on someone to be completely responsible for someone that can't talk for themselves. So I was trying to find a way to ease their anxiety too. If I even overly prepare them, maybe that would help some of the burden, I guess, was my thought behind that.
no, it makes sense to do it. I just I don't know. I personally don't want to do it, but just like I said, like our viewers, listeners, or whatever we call them, like it's obviously a personal choice of whether you want to do it. And I think it's a time saver in the long run if you see multiple doctors, or you see like you have a doctor and then you have to switch doctors. Like it's just an easy thing to have in your roster or your tool belt.
Yeah.
It's easy to, I don't know. I thought that made sense. And then that horrible story about your hospital visit, which was, I don't even blame the nurses. It's they're overworked and underpaid, and it just,
They really are. And they actually, one of the nurses towards the end, he's like, you need to get out of here. And the hospital that I did end up going to was the one he was like, you need to go to this hospital. And I was like, yeah, that's what I've been thinking. And he's like, you're not wrong, but I didn't tell you that.
right.
He's like, you need to get out. He's like, something's not right and you need to get out. And I really have a lot of respect for him for, you know, saying that to me, because he was genuinely concerned about my safety and my care.
Right.
And
they're real people. It's not like they're monsters or anything like
no,
that. Real people caught in a system that just doesn't have people first.
exactly. Well, and does, like you said, doesn't have enough workers right now. Like they were already, particularly nurses, understaffed pre-COVID. And then with COVID happening, the medical system lost a lot of doctors. Like a lot of doctors retired early. There's a lot less people going into the field, and there aren't enough nurses. Um, and it's easy for mistakes to get made. But that's why you have to be so adamant about standing up for yourself, and not just assume that because they are doctors or nurses or people in a professional setting that they're perfect. They're human. Everybody makes mistakes.
Right. And they don't have all the answers, or sometimes they don't have any answers, and it's not their
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
Their education or lack thereof.
Well, and we're not, and you've mentioned this too before, that I think in an episode we're going to be posting soon and other ones, but the science just isn't there for a lot of these things. Like we think of ourselves as modern, but science for medicine, a lot of it is very, very new.
Yeah. Well, that gets into a lot of theory and basis of theory on, application, and just you get on this rabbit hole and you realize that a lot of stuff is based on assumption and not actual like scientific evidence, and it's all just lost. to me on a lot of stuff that we do. And I which is what brings me to part of your topic was like, I do think we need to start writing our congressmen about changing our medical system because it's broken. Like, even if everyone got healthcare, universal healthcare was approved tomorrow, we're still approved for a system that is just, it's lame. It's just, it's ill-equipped, and it's dogmatic and ignorant. And like, I do think regenerative medicine is the future of medicine. And like, I know it's getting a lot of pushback in this country because a lot of industry stands to lose out if that becomes the forefront of how we treat people. But I do think that working with the body makes more sense than attacking it.
What for those out there that are not familiar with regenerative medicine, could you get a little bit, like, give us a little bit more of a specific?
The one I'm talking about is stem cell therapy, which I do think holds a lot of power. But I mean, stem cell therapy's gone through a lot of trial and error, and for a long time we emphasized embryological stem cells, like you'd see in like South Park and in the news about using fetal stem cells and like aborted babies and stuff. But that's just not what present day stem cell treatment is. It's at the closest is to a child. It's umbilical cord stem cells, but they pulled them from fat tissue and just like places in the body that you just everywhere's got stem cells. And
when you were telling me embryonic, like, stem cells aren't actually helpful in that sense, like, that's why, so it's a misunderstanding or something.
Well, that's what I've heard, that embryological stem cells have been shown to be rather useless. They want to become babies. And so when you put them inside yourself, they try to become a baby. So you end up with a tumor because you got embryological stem cells. But if you get a stem cell that's meant to be like a helper, like umbilical cord, amniotic, mesenchymal stem cells, like that, just they have a supportive role. They don't have like
a growth role,
pluripotent, like they don't transform into other tissue. Well, I think they do eventually, but mostly they're there to give out like messages and tell other cells what to do, and to trophic factors and all that kind of stuff. Like, they're there to supply support.
We should do an episode on this. It's really interesting.
It's cool. And that's why I want to try to go to Mexico, because you can't get it here in the US. And not because you can't get stem cell here in the US, but because they're not allowed to grow it into the millions that they can do in places like Mexico and South America and Panama and India and to Japan, and like all these places, they're allowed to do that, but because of the laws here, we can't grow them. And I think that a lot of that is based around the propaganda that had to do with embryological stem cell.
That's interesting and possibly very, very true. And I do want to say that Speaking in Spoons is not what's the word that I want to say, like, endorsing any type of medicine or treatment or anything like that. We're just discussing possibilities, because when you do this, Nate has talked about like filming his experience and talking about it on the show, which I think could just be very educational, informative to all of us to learn about the experience.
Well, what I like about it is that, okay, worst case scenario, it doesn't do anything, but there's no negative side effect other than the loss of a lot of money doing it.
Right.
So as much as I can temper that, I think there's really no cost to trying it.
And you get a great vacation, which I know like many of us don't get to do when we're sick. So
well, it's just for like 4 days though, so it's not really vacation.
Hey, I would take 4 days. Would take 4 days anywhere right now. I would take 1 day, a half a day. Are you kidding me? But I would probably pick somewhere a lot cooler. because you know me and my heat.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you can get this kind of treatment in places in Norway, I think, or just in that sort of area. Like you can go to colder
Yeah.
places to get it too. It's not just South America is just the closest.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think we need to shake up the system.
But
And
just stem cells just the tip of the iceberg in regenerative medicine. There's T
yeah.
cell, there's just like all kinds of like stuff that helps your body, doesn't, essentially poison you, which I
But
think
even
is a
if
lot
we
of what
got all these things approved, and like you said, even if we had Medicare for all approved tomorrow or today, like a lot of the things that are occurring right now, like understaff and training and all of this stuff is like a big problem that I've had. I don't know if you've run into this, is because one of the things I wanted to be as a social worker was a medical social worker. The majority of medical social workers I have had haven't known how to help me. Like they haven't, I'm still having trouble getting a what is it, a uh having trouble thinking today, but a wheelchair that can transport chair, like the ones that you use in a doctor's office. It's a lot easier, there's a lot smaller, more compact,
uh,
because the wheelchair I have is so comfortable, but it folds and stuff, but it's really heavy because it's so comfortable. It's built for me, but it's not built for the people that have to take me places. So my mom can't fold that thing up and move it, so I need a transport chair. Nobody in the doctor's office knows how to get it. I'm looking forward to going to my physical therapist because next week, because I know they'll be able to do it. Because whenever I've gotten a wheelchair, they know how to do it. But the social worker has been giving me all this incorrect information, and I know it's incorrect. I just haven't had the energy and time to follow up on it because I've been dealing with other stuff. But like I've had trouble with them helping me with housing, with like kind of anything. And housing is basically a non-existent horrible issue here anyways. But um other things that I've needed help with, they've even given me just incorrect information. And I can't imagine being a patient um they didn't know to look outside of that social worker, or didn't have family member that could help them and to know to look outside and realize that information might be incorrect, because it's not really something that's part of like what is taught really in curriculum. A lot of what you learn in social work is really based, in the psychology and the whole body and all of that stuff, and you learn the specifics of what you would be doing on a job in internship and thing like that. But if you're going to places where it's a continual problem of people not knowing the proper, yeah, I just get blown away. And my own like doctor, my current doctor, who teaches, um was saying incorrect information about my disorders. And I was like, no. um like she was going to send me to genetics for my POTS, and POTS, there is a form of genetic POTS, but I was tested for that. And
you,
um yeah, but it's
yeah.
weird, it's scary. I'm talking in circles today, and I apologize, but I'm going back to the fact that what you said is the system is broken, and how do we, it seems kind of overwhelming. How do you even, what do you focus on first? How do you break it down? I don't know.
Well, I mean, and in fear of sounding like a kook, I think that the way we interact with our medical care, like how we treat, I think is a bit flawed. Like I think there's two different ways to approach illness. One is changing, like attacking something, and the other is changing the environment of that person. Like I think um was it Florence Nightingale, like she did some sort of like where she helped troops. Like I think the way that she helped heal people in the hospital was not by fighting bacteria and viruses and stuff, was more hygiene related. So it was just a healthier place to be, so less people got sick. And I think hospitals, I think, I mean, they've taken the hygiene thing to a new level, but I think they've missed out on the way that they treat, like everything's always antibiotic or chemo or just attack, attack, attack. But I think what's nice about, if I go back to the stem cell, is what happens with the regenerative medicine is it's not
Right.
about changing, it's not about killing something, it's about shifting how the body is, like changing the terrain theory of how the body is itself. And by changing how the body, where the body is, the body itself will change its physiology to match it.
Well, and going off that, how cool would it be if medicine really became about not just the treating, but the preventative? Like we talk
Right.
about that, but it
Right.
doesn't really exist. And I
Well,
think a big reason it doesn't exist is insurance doesn't really cover it.
and the system's not really built for preventative. Like it doesn't,
Right.
there's no profit incentive to do it. Like if anything, it makes them have less money because people don't get sick and come to them for treatment.
Right.
It's cynical to say that, and I don't think it's intentional. It's just the way it's set up. The incentive is to not be preventive, like to do the least amount of preventative care.
Right.
And I think a lot of doctors are waking up to that. That's why like functional doctors, and I think
Yeah.
people are starting to realize like, hey, we're not like people first, and that's a real problem because we're just making the problem. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, we don't have enough staff to deal with the COVID epidemic, and like the level of illness, like there's not enough staff to deal with it. And I think we're making that problem. Like there's too many people to treat because we're not treating them correctly in the first place. So they're just coming back like a revolving door.
Yeah. Well, and like John, we're gonna have an incredible guest in our next episode. And he talked a lot about his relationships with doctors in the over the years that he's been an advocate, and he's become close to some, and that they feel too that they are banging their heads up against, the system, because there's only because it is a system of profit, and they're limited in what they are allowed to do because of the overall, the powers that be above them. So yeah, I think sometimes as patients we can feel like the system is out to get us, or our doctors aren't helping us or not listening, or but yeah.
Then I just say I don't think it's intentional. Like there's not some
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
it's not an intentional indifference or intentional evil. Like
Yeah,
it's just it's the way the system's set up that it's just
exactly.
usually cruel, but not meant to be cruel.
Not intentionally. And that's I think one of the things I talked about in there is like there are not out like no institution, no company, no doctor, no nurse sets out to go, well, okay, there was that serial killer, but like
Well,
you
that's
don't
one person in the
the
system.
one person, but they don't set out to be like, oh, I want to go into this, profession to like make people's lives miserable,
Hey, like how can I be evil today? Like yeah.
Yeah, but that's why, like I was saying, we can't just sit back and complain. We have to find a way to become a part of the process somehow. Like I've been volunteering. I'm gonna be on a board for people of self advocates at a hospital. I'm
Right.
so excited about this. To be able to kind of give input from people with disabilities or families, what we experience, and kind of work with the hospital. And I think that's a great idea. And I hope this is something more hospitals and doctors' offices are doing. And I'm so excited about this. And I mean, this is the kind of thing I want to do. I want to work in, kind of helping all of this for the future.
Yeah. And I think that says something, but I want to help people too. Like that's the whole point of like going to Mexico. Like if it works,
Yeah,
I want to bring that back here and advocate, congressionally to get this sort of medicine approved because I would love to
exactly.
see friends get treated. And I'll just be the guinea pig that goes to Mexico and does this crazy thing at a shockingly American run business in Mexico. It's just it's ridiculous.
Well, I was complaining to my mom about the FDA the other day, and I was like, it's all in who pays off the FDA and everything. And she's like, it's not that bad, Christina. I was like, I know. I used to have this, you know, very naive picture of the FDA and the way things are approved
Right.
for medicine and for technology, medical technology. And then I started watching documentaries and reading some reports and stuff, and I had no idea how little how like how little goes into the approval process for technology. It's kind of scary, and that's why there's a lot of lawsuits and stuff because of people have been used as guinea pigs basically on things that have been already approved by the FDA, and that is just confounding to me. And their lives have been destroyed and ruined. Um, but it's because the technology moves faster than the approval process, you know, because we're just moving and moving at a speed. So it's like, I don't know what the solution is. But, there is the case like with, the opioids where there is the incentives. There was the incentives for that guy in the approval process getting, you know, to be a part of things at Pfizer. And that is corporate and that is money. And that is scary to me that we're putting that first instead of people's lives. I don't understand that. And I know a lot of people work that way. Um, I just
But
can't imagine putting money before in my own career, anything before other people's lives. To me, that is evil.
yeah, but not intentional. Well, capitalist kind of evil. Like
Capitalist.
it's
Yeah.
not morally evil. It's just like
Isn't it though? Isn't
to
it?
put profit over people. I mean, I guess you could say that.
Your own personal profit over the lives of other people. Yeah, I think that is evil. It's selfish and evil, but
It's
that's just me.
definitely selfish, and just it's a bit. I just think it all feeds back into itself, and when we put profit over people, it comes back to bite us because it
Yeah.
just end up with just like so many sick people. I think that's the reason why there are so many sick people today because for decades we've just put money first and people have just been getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and it's all just now our hospitals are overloaded and people are just waiting in the rafters for treatments that don't really work, and
Yeah.
it's just there's just
Preach.
cofactors.
Well, I'm hopeful. Um, I'm hopeful that something good comes out of Mexico for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the
don't,
process and
don't jinx it. We'll see. I mean,
jinx it. Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
If
I'm
anything,
not,
it'll be a good vacation.
it'll be a nice
And
place,
we'll learn more about stem cells.
and I'll get to live stream, which I haven't ever done.
Hey, and maybe we can get Michael J. Fox interested in
If
whatever has happened down there.
it works, I gave you his
Yeah.
contact. We could contact him if it worked, or he
Yeah.
maybe sent him the episode.
Yeah. Who
We would-
knows?
I
Well,
thought, yeah. Anyway, that's we'll see what happens with all
on
that.
that note, though, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or you think that sums it up?
Well, that was the best part of your talk was the self advocacy thing and writing people, and I think regenerative medicine is one thing, but I think people also need to start talking and speaking out about all the stuff that's gone wrong in the medicals because I didn't know at the beginning of all this 20 years ago when I first got sick, or 14 years ago when I first got sick, but I had no idea. I trusted my doctors. I trusted the medical system. And it's not that I don't trust it now. It's just I have so much less trust.
Yeah,
And I wish it wasn't that way.
me too. Me too.
And on that
I
note,
went in with lots of trust and yeah, yeah.
you take advantage of it.
Well, thank you guys for listening, and we hope you will go out and write your congressman and get involved and in any way that you can, like as little or as lots as you can, because even just a little is a whole lot right now. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you soon on our next episode about the Connective Tissue Coalition. And save your spoons.
Bye.
If you want to contact us, please send a DM or email to speakinginspoons@gmail.com with any stories you have or would like to interview with us on any of our upcoming topics. And check out our website for all of our upcoming episodes and what's happening in the Speaking in Spoons community at www.speakinginspoons.com. Thank you for listening to Speaking in Spoons, and have a great day.